So you grew up in Pennsylvania, and I understand from the dedication of your book about Gettysburg that you came here a lot as a child.
When the centennial of the Civil War was coming on, people were very excited about it. There were a lot of publications, including serious history books for children, and I just got caught up in it. By the time I was 7 years old, we lived about 2.5 hours away from the battlefield, and at least once a year, my father and mother would bring my brother and I down here, let us play in the cannons and take us to the little museums and the little toy soldier shops. And I became enraptured by the story and never lost that. When I was in 7th grade, I tortured my English teacher by writing a 3-volume history of the Civil War. And it was almost published by Scribner's. Blessedly, it was not, because in 7th grade, I didn't always understand all that stuff about plagiarism.
Sure.
But for me, the Civil War has been a lifelong interest. And finally, as you referenced, people claiming our country's never been so divided. Good Lord, 740,000 Americans died in our Civil War, suggesting we were somewhat more divided in those days. So I really wanted to write about it in a way that would bring the visceral aspects, the human aspects of the war to readers in a narrative form that's a pleasure to read, that keeps you turning the pages, but that's very accurate history and gives people a little insight into, again, the human dimension, rather than being bronze or marble statues up on a plinth or pedestal. These were flesh and blood human beings with their own fears and dreads and their home lives and missing their wives and girlfriends, their ambitions, their illnesses, because sickness is pervasive during the war. So all those human dimensions, I wanted to capture it for a country that has forgotten its history. And we need to know our history, because when you do not know your history, you are prey to demagogues.
Over thousands of pages of books. Do you still find it that there's plenty of subject material to write about? Or does it all blend together into one mass of blue and gray?
No, it's endless. But, you want an author to talk about his books? Oh, we authors don't do that. No, the books, they're very important to me. I've been writing since I was a child, publishing for almost 4 decades, and these are by far, to me, the best things I've ever done and the most meaningful, because this cycle of books, from Cain at Gettysburg through Hell at Richmond, Valley of the Shadow, down to Petersburg, and then next year, Judgment and Appomattox, they can all be read individually. You don't have to read them in order. But if you do, and you hit on it, if you read them in order, from Cain at Gettysburg through to Appomattox, it's really one 2,400 page novel. A panoramic novel, and that's what I set out to do. I thought at first it would only be 3 volumes. It turned into 5 because I needed more space. And I'm proud of it. I wanted to do it because I felt the Civil War was being portrayed as this romantic endeavor. Look, these battlefields stank. Men suffered horrible agony in huge numbers, and yet they fought on. And so what I wanted to do was bring home to people the visceral, human intensity of this war that they don't know, that we don't know anymore. People have this romanticized version of the past. And my God, the Civil War had its gallantry and its heroism, but it wasn't romantic. All you had to see was a field hospital. So for me, as a former soldier, trying to bring home the reality, but also the humanity of soldiers and leaders alike, which is often missing from history books. For instance, armchair generals will read a history book and say, well, why did General X do something that stupid? Well, when you're looking at the neat lines in the map, yeah, it looks pretty stupid. But General X probably hadn't slept for 3 days, didn't have the complete information we have about the situation, may have had a toothache or dysentery, or like Robert E. Lee at key points, who had angina, who had rheumatism, who had chronic diarrhea, and then you add the flea bites. So these men were doing the best they could. And we tend to be awfully judgmental in retrospect, and I'm trying to capture the humanity.